All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of pro wrestling and sports in general. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 75 of this freezing cold podcast, and it is the final episode of 2021. And oh man, can you believe it? 2021 is almost near its end, and we've actually done 75 of these things. Now, technically, it's 76 if you count episode 0, which honestly is just like my introduction to this whole podcasting shtick. But anyway, 75 episodes, well, 76, if you even want to count episode 0, but 75 episodes nonetheless. It's been a crazy year, 2021. Yes, it is. And, it's really been like, a crazy journey being here, just shooting the shit, just ranting, discussing, all those kinds of things, just simply talking to all of you about wrestling and sports in this past year, in this first year. Yes, my rookie year of doing this podcast. And honestly, it's a fun time. It really is a fun time. Just chilling back, relaxing, and just talking all my bullshit about my view on pro wrestling and sports. And, heading into year 2, I'm looking forward to more of it. So anyway, I'm looking forward to more of it in 2022. And for now, we got some things to talk about because we're here to talk about week 15. Oh no, not week 15. Oh man, see, that's how much I'm ready for 2022 already, because we actually got week 16 of the 2021 NFL season. We got a bunch of games that were happening that, remind you, not delayed this time around. There were no games that got moved around like on a Tuesday or another doubleheader on Monday night. No, we actually got all the games without no interruption. Week 16, and we got all the games, all the winners and losers, my players of the week, and we're gonna be checking in on the playoff picture as we head into the final week of the regular season. Yes, week 17. Yes, it is finally here, boys, of the biggest regular season ever, pal. Oh yes, it is. Before we get into any of that stuff we're going to be talking about here today, I want to make sure to remind all of you that you can listen to and follow everything in relation to Very Cold Lasagna, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, and Google Podcasts, and follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. Make sure to keep the fridge very cold and all those good things heading into the year 2022. So let's get this show on the roll, shall we? Because there's a lot to talk about as we head into the final week of the regular season. Yes, week 16. Let's talk about that first. Unlike week 15, where it just brought out, honestly, the worst week in the NFL with a lot of not really so quality games. We had a lot of players on the COVID reserve list, and then there was just a bunch of backlash in regards to, the overall handling of the COVID list and the COVID protocols in the NFL. And I mean, obviously it wasn't just the NFL, it was obviously the NBA, the NHL was kind of having this backlash too. And it was just kind of a bad time. It was just kind of a bad time for the NFL during this week. So it was just not a good week for the NFL during that 15th week. Now, fortunately for week 16, it wasn't as bad. Still, there were some players out on the COVID reserve list, but unlike week 15, there were no delays, no postponements, nothing like that. I mean, there was a threatening of a postponement for at least one game, but even though COVID mania continues to run wild, and yes, I get it, health over everything first, health and safety over everything. It's just, always unfortunate that these things tend to happen. So fortunately for week 16, there were no delays, no postponements, nothing like that. Everything went on as scheduled, even though, it does kind of suck that you have to play under these conditions. So that in mind, we had some playoff glitching scenarios that went on during the week for week 16 in the AFC. The Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, after their big win over the LA Chargers in week 15, they had a chance to wrap up the AFC West with with just a week away in the final week. They had a chance to clinch up the AFC West if they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers and, the Chargers. Somehow in Houston, clippered up against the Texans. And, it was also a big game for the New England Patriots at home against the Bills. If they won that game, they get the head-to-head tiebreaker. And in the next couple of weeks, they could become the AFC East champions again. And for the Tennessee Titans, all they had to do was beat the 49ers on Thursday, which, well, they did. You already heard about it on my Christmas Day special episode of this podcast. And they had to wait for the Colts to lose on Christmas night to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, on the NFC side of things, it's pretty much for the Cowboys. You win against Washington on Sunday night, and the NFC East is yours. For the Bucs, same thing. Beat the Panthers, and the NFC South is yours. The Cardinals and the Rams, all they had to do was clinch their playoff spots this week. All they had to do was win over the Colts and the Vikings, or for the Cardinals in this case, the Rams to beat the Vikings, and a playoff spot would be for the Cardinals. Now, for elimination purposes, because who wants to not get eliminated, but they get eliminated anyway, the Bears, the Lions, the Jets, the Texans, and the Jaguars, they've already been eliminated. But who's going to join them this week? Well, there's a possibility that the Panthers, the Seahawks, and the New York Giants were pretty much facing elimination this week if they had lost their games. And the Falcons were getting close to that territory too if they lost their game, and the Eagles and the Vikings also won their games. Now, the Browns on the AFC side and the Broncos were also nearing elimination too if they lost their games and a bunch of other teams won. So, a lot of things running wild as we head into the second to last week of this NFL season. Yes, the biggest season ever, pal. So, we kick things off on Thursday night in Nashville, Tennessee, on the NFL Network. Yes, it was not on Fox anymore. So, the Tennessee Titans beat the San Francisco 49ers, coming back down from, I think it was like 10-0 in the second half, because thanks to Jimmy Garbage Fail, he kicked off the weekend of Christmas, giving away 2 turnovers that would help Ryan Tannehill and the Titans beat San Fran in a pretty weird game. Yes. And they would get one step closer to clinching the AFC South. Then we got some Christmas Day action on all around the league. The Green Bay Packers held on to beat the Cleveland Browns 24-22. It was the Nick Chubb show as the Browns were trying to make their comeback. But Baker Mayfield, man, he ruined this game for the Browns. 4 interceptions. Yes, that is peak skid mark football. And Aaron Rodgers, 3 touchdowns to Devontae Adams. It was pretty much all the Packers needed to get a win on Christmas and put some coal in the Browns' stocking. Then on the other Christmas game on the nightcap, the Indianapolis Colts beat the Arizona Cardinals 22-16. Jonathan Taylor was actually relatively quiet. Yes, 100 yards, but no touchdown. It's still a relatively quiet game for JT. But still, Carson Wentz and that Colts defense produced. And, there's got to be a lot of worry for that Cardinals team. And even if they got a playoff spot, man, it's not looking bright. They're looking like a first-round exit at this point in the game. Then we get to the Sunday slate of games. Excuse me. We first get to the early morning slate. The Philadelphia Eagles manhandle the New York Giants, typically 34-10. Jake from State Farm started this game, and it pretty much just went as well as they expected. It started off slow. They did much as they could, but the Eagles went on a second half explosion, and they took Mike Glennon to Suplex City, so much that the Eagles pounced on him too. So the Eagles take care of business 34-10 as they inch closer to their own playoff spot. The LA Rams beat the Minnesota Vikings 30-23 in a pretty important game for both teams. And this was also a game where Kirk Cousins and Matt Stafford were trying to outduel each other in how many interceptions they can make. And Matt Stafford clearly wanted that department, but the Vikings couldn't take advantage because they apparently forgot how to play offense. So in doing so, in the Rams beating the Vikings, the Rams clinched their playoff spot, but they also helped the Cardinals clinch their own playoff spot. Oh man, well, the Vikings' dream season is almost coming to an end. Meanwhile, in Foxborough, the Buffalo Bills get a huge win over the New England Patriots. They get their revenge from a couple weeks ago in that windy game in Buffalo. You know, the Patriots had every chance to get back in this game. You know, the Josh Allen, the Bills were dominating the Patriots in this one, but you know, the Patriots trying to get back in this game with Damian Harris, the running back, but the Bills had pretty much every answer for them. Not just on offense, but a relentless defense going after Mac Jones. So this was an impressive win by the Bills in this game, 33-21, as they now control their destiny with the AFC East with 2 games left. The Tampa Bay Bucks destroy the Carolina Panthers 32-6. You know, there were a lot of questions about the Bucks without its top guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Leonard Fournette, but it didn't matter to Tom Brady, because he got Antonio Brown and that backfield of Ronald Jones and some guy named Keyshawn Vaughn, as they decimated not just Cam Newton, but also Sam Darnold and that Carolina defense. Oh, man. I don't know if Matt Rule is going to survive the season after these last 2 games. The New York Jets beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in the who wants to give up the number 1 overall pick game, 26-21. You know, this is actually an okay game by the first 2 picks back in April, but sadly, there are just too many what ifs, too many things to not care about in this game. The Atlanta Falcons beat the Detroit Lions 20-16. You know, Tim Boyle nearly got Detroit back in this game. He didn't do bad, but you know, he didn't do enough. And you know, he made a costly interception on the last play of the game that ruined any hope for the Lions, gained the 3rd win of the game. The Houston Texans, in probably the upset of the week, beat the LA Chargers. Oh, no, sorry, we're not doing that this week. LA Chargers, clip her up, ha! They get their they get their Charger morphers, and they switch it to the LA Clippers logo, and they morph into the Clippers. Oh, the Chargers clippered up in Houston. Yes, they did, because Davis Mills and the entire Texans were made into gods. Ugh, in Houston, shaking and rattling Justin Herbert. And yes, in fairness, the Chargers were COVID depleted. They didn't have guys like Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, and those guys for this game. But still, you lose to the Texans. You lose to Davis Mills. COVID or not, this is a really bad loss by the Clippers. Like, they're denying that the Chargers are the Clippers. Justin Herbert is the Paul George. Like, Austin Eckler, or Justin Jackson, I guess, is whatever's left of the Clippers, okay? There's no denying, there's no debating at this point that the Chargers and the Clippers, these 2 LA teams that nobody gives a shit about, are the same. They're the same. So might as well just call them the one same name that everyone knows these 2 back-end teams for. The Clippers. They are the Clippers. So in a big AFC North matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals manhandle the pretty much decimated Baltimore Ravens 41-21. Now I get it. Josh Johnson was starting because, well, no Lamar Jackson. He's injured. Tyler Huntley went on the COVID list, and yeah, they needed a quarterback. So you get this dude, this veteran named Josh Johnson, and yeah, he did okay. I'm not saying he didn't do well, but he didn't do enough. I mean, obviously, he's been a journeyman for, well, reasons. And, well, everyone besides Mark Andrews did, well, not good. And the Bengals decided to eat some Ravens flock for brunch on Sunday because Joe Burrow and this entire offense feasted on a Ravens secondary. That's just been held onto by Elmer's glue at this point. So the Bengals get a big win on Sunday, and well, they're in the driver's seat to seal this AFC North for good. It's just going to come with a tall task next week, though. We'll get into that later. So in the afternoon games, we start with the Chicago Bears beating the Seattle Seahawks 25-24. And man, you know, I guess Bears football did a nice thing for the 49ers and their fan base here, because Bears football eliminated the Seahawks from playoff contention. Yes, the Seahawks gone forever. And not only that, the Bears football dug the Seahawks grave into the NFC West basement, at least for this season. And perhaps maybe even they dug the grave of the Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll era in Seattle. So Bears football actually doing some things, and it came in the hands of sick fails. Yes, not Justin Fields, not Andy Dalton, Nick Fails, Fails, and this mediocre Bears offense. They actually managed to make a comeback and successfully win the game on a 2-point conversion. That is peak Bears football, guaranteed. Yes, it is. So then in Kansas City, the Chiefs destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, there were a lot of blowout games in this week. The Chiefs destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers 36-10, but this one was actually justified. In their last home game of the season, the Chiefs, they put on another clinic on a very mediocre Steelers team that, well, their offense is a fraud, and their defense, well, it's good, but, well, once you put them up against a pretty good offense, well, it shows pretty much how this overall team is as a total fraud. Then in the Sin City, the Las Vegas Raiders beat the Denver Broncos in, well, the someone has to win game to keep their playoff hopes alive game. They beat the Denver Broncos 17-13, and Drew Lock's shittiness was pretty much on full display as they made the Raiders defensive front look like gods. And the Raiders, well, they just did enough to put Denver away. Then the Sunday night game, and these games like this really make me question why the fuck the NFL decides to put these on Sunday Night Football, and like it's one of its marquee games. Like, why do we continue to get crappy primetime games? Like, why? So what I mean by this is that the Dallas Cowboys decimated, just like pretty much, I guess this is the theme of the week, blowout decimation games, and week 16 they beat the Washington football team 56-14. And I get it, any given Sunday, but holy hell. The NFL really has to stop putting predictably terrible primetime games because, Dallas is the biggest media market in the world. Everyone loves the Cowboys. Everyone loves to suck the Cowboys and Jerry Jones's dick. Oh, yeah, we love that Cowboy dick. This is just yet another example of, the Cowboys pretty much murdering its division rival because, the rest of the NFC East sucked ass. And this is pretty much another example of, Roger Goodell and pretty much the entire sports media world and everyone, all these network executives loving to suck on that Cowboy dick. That's why they're on Sunday Night Football and pretty much all these like nationally televised games that people question, why does the ratings go down? Why does the ratings go down during these games? It's because they end up in blowouts. They end up in blowouts when one team actually sucks. And this one good team is putting on a clinic. Like, what more can you do? What more can you do? So then in the Monday night game, the Miami Dolphins beat the New Orleans Saints 20-3. It was a COVID-depleted Saints team that started some guy named Ian Brook. And, yeah, he looked absolutely terrible in this one. And the Saints couldn't really move the ball at all in this one against a really good Dolphins defense. This Dolphins team, they've really turned it around. And Tua and the Dolphins, they took full advantage of this just very depleted Saints team on Monday night. They took care of business as they should. So the Dolphins close out the week with the win over the Saints 20-3. So that was the week that was week 16. Yeah, there were a lot of blowout games in this one. It was pretty much blowout city in this one. I mean, some of it was justified, and others, just like the Cowboys game, make me question, it's like, why are we even getting this game in prime time? Like, just why? So what are you guys' thoughts on week 16? Let me know as we get into the winners and losers. Let me start with the winners. The Cincinnati Bengals, man, I think they made their second big statement. I mean, it's not their biggest statement, but it was like their second big statement of the season with a total thrashing of its division rival in the Baltimore Ravens. And they were trying on a guy in Josh Johnson, like that's a journeyman. And a couple weeks ago, they pretty much throttled the Pittsburgh Steelers and washed ass Big Ben Roethlisberger. And here in this game, the Bengals did what a lot of teams fail to do in situations like this, where a team is totally fucked up in the ass with all these injuries and COVID. They took total advantage of it. They accelerated and never let go of the gas pedal, and the offense looked really great. Especially the offensive line. They allowed Joe Burrow a lot of time to throw in this game, and they kept him upright. He was like never pressured out of his comfort zone in this one. And this defense, it just kept covering everybody from Bateman to Marquise Brown. Obviously Mark Andrews, like you can't really do much about him, but everyone else, it was just nowhere for Josh Johnson to find. Now it's going to be a tough test for the Bengals next week against the Chiefs, but this was a win that the Bengals needed to have. And I don't realistically think that they can clinch the division next week because the Chiefs are a very tall order for them, but anything's possible. Anything is possible for the Bengals. And, if their hearts and minds are into it, who knows? And we'll see what happens. The Buffalo Bills, they were heading to this game with some sort of vengeance in mind. And, they were also heading to this game like, they were having like a little bit of mixed momentum. Heading into December, they lost two straight games. And that Carolina game, obviously, you were playing a pretty bad Panthers team. And you didn't really have much of momentum going in. I mean, same thing with New England. They were coming off their bye with a pretty disappointing loss to the Colts. But man, for the Bills to get this kind of win in week 16, they got really good in this one. They dominated the Patriots on the road in Foxborough so bad that fans actually started to leave before the end of the game. And now they have the edge on the Patriots in this division race after getting such an important win. And this is actually important for the Bills to clinch the AFC East, because now your schedule gets much easier. Now they can't take that for granted like they did with the Jaguars and other teams, but they have to take care of their business, because coming up next is the Falcons and the Jets. Yes, those are their last two remaining teams. Whereas the Patriots, yes, they play the Jaguars at home this coming week, but their last game is against the Dolphins. Yes, that is their last game against a Dolphins team that is still actually trying to vie for a playoff slot after winning 7 straight games now. So these Bills can't treat these last 2 games as gimmies. So just like with the Bengals, this was a statement game that they need to make, and they certainly did. Speaking of the Miami Dolphins, let's talk about them, because they landed in my winners category this week. They went from 1-7. Everyone was pretty much thinking, they're thinking of the draft already. There's no way they're going to make playoff consideration. And then all of a sudden they start winning, and they're 8-7. And I'm still one of those guys that kind of think that they're probably not going to make a playoff run, because they still got 2 tough opponents left in Tennessee and New England. But the fact that they got this crazy turnaround in the first place is pretty commendable. And the defense, it's played pretty well for the most part. They're first in pretty much every category since their winning streak started. And Tua Tagovailoa, he's played some pretty decent football and pretty turnover-free football. And he stayed relatively healthy ever since the halfway point of the season. He hasn't been like off the field in favor of Jacoby Brissett. And, he stayed pretty healthy for the most part. And, rookie receiver Jalen Waddle is emerging as one of the top receivers in the NFL. And he's emerging as Tua's top target, along with Mike Gesicki. So, this is going to be a tough test for the Dolphins this coming week and the last game in the regular season. But, to be at this point is honestly give him credit where it's due. Speaking of giving credit where it's due, let's not do that to the Washington football team, because they are one of the losers of this week. Man, what was that? You know what? That display of football from Washington is one of the reasons why they shouldn't have been on prime time for any point of the season. Like, I get it, the short turnaround from Tuesday because of the COVID outbreak, but man, what was that? Taylor Heinicke played like a deer in the headlights. Like, he was had nowhere to throw it against a very good Dallas defense. His offensive line did him no favors either, but man, you gotta get rid of that football, dude. And the only fight that this Washington team showed was, well, themselves. They fought with each other on the sidelines. Yikes. And this team, with all the hope that they had as a wild card team, and hell, I even thought they could surpass Dallas in the NFC East. Yes, I'm that crazy. But man, here we are again, thinking of them as one big massive disappointment. The Seattle Seahawks, why did they lose this week, even though they're well dead in the basement? Well, that's because I get to say so. The NFC West would like to thank Bears football for getting the Seahawks dead in the grave, eliminating them from playoff contention again, and getting them one step closer to ousting Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll out of Seattle. Again, it's not officially official, but it's bound to happen inevitably. So, man, this was actually a pretty embarrassing loss by Seattle. Yet another one. First you get shut out. First you get blown out. And then this happens during the season. You allowed the Bears to not only make a comeback and win on your home field that's snowing as hell, but you let that happen, not with Justin Fields, not with Andy Dalton, but with Nick Foles. Nick Fails. Fails. You let that happen with Big Dick Nick. Damn. That is the epitome of Seahawks embarrassment right there. And then the Arizona Cardinals. Can we be really surprised that they're choking this late in the season? Like, look at last season. They were at a point where they were, 7 and... I forgot. I think it was like 7 and something. And before they went 2-5. 5 and something. And then we went 2-5 to end up 8-8 and out of the playoff picture. But here they are again. They started off 8-0. And then, well, it's like, even though they clinched the playoff spot, they're still choking. They're still back to their typical choking ways. The offense looks pretty flat. The defense is giving up a ton of big plays, unlike the first half of the season. Oh, and then there's one more thing that I saw on this Saturday night primetime game on NFL Network. Cliff Kingsbury on the Cardinals' last possession of the game, before they tried to go for an onside kick. Cliff Kingsbury on third down burned so much time, and instead of trying to go for a touchdown, he decided to kick a field goal. A field goal with so much time left. Holy crap. That is some form of stupidity. That is so terrible. Man, I've never seen that before. I've really never seen that before. So they can enjoy their playoff spot, but man, they're looking like a first round exit, like very bad. And then the LA Clippers. Yes, the LA Clippers. How? Like, how of all teams? Oh wait, never mind. Like, why do I even ask that question? It's the Clippers. They always find a way. They always find a way, no matter the circumstances, to clip her up, to charge her up, whatever the case may be, to dog it up. I mean, I guess you could say the only positive thing coming out of this game was Austin Eckler's backup, Justin Jackson. He played a pretty good game, but again, he couldn't do everything because Justin Herbert played really bad. He played really bad in this one, and it didn't help that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were terrible in this game. And that defense made Davis Mills look like the second coming of Dan Marino. This was just an overall bad game by the Clippers. The Chargers really clippered up with big lightning bolts with clippering. And they did at such a bad time because, if they don't beat Denver, if they don't beat the Raiders, they're going to miss the playoffs, and it's going to be their own damn fault. Now, my players of the week, it's a little smaller this week. The list is pretty small, but that's because, I combined at least one group of players into one category. And that's because, the Bengals quartet of Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, they all won the Player of the Week award. Pretty much the entirety of the Bengals offense. Let's just say that. They pretty much put all the spotlight on themselves and pretty much destroyed the Ravens in their win to pretty much get a big head-to-head victory and put them one step closer to the AFC North division. And the Dallas Cowboys defense, they pretty much limited the Washington offense into doing nothing all game long. And, they had their fun too. DeMarcus Lawrence gets a pick six on Taylor Heineke. And the special teams too, they get a blocked punt. And of all people, the running back, Corey Clement, he blocks the punt. And then I think some other guy collects it in the end zone untouched for a touchdown. Damn. The defense really went to work, even after the backup started coming in. So those are my players of the week. I know, very small list, but those are the ones that really stood out to me. So as we head into week 17, the final week of the regular season, let's check in on the playoff picture. And the AFC side of things, the Chiefs clinched the AFC West after hammering the Steelers at home, and the Chargers clippering up in Houston. And now their focus is on getting that top seed, but they're going to need some help from Tennessee to do that. The Titans, unfortunately, couldn't clinch the AFC South because even though they beat the 49ers on Thursday, the Colts continue to win their games. But the Titans win on Thursday night. It helps things. It really helps things for them because all they need now is just one win. And they also moved to the 2 seed. The Bengals took sole possession of first place in the AFC North and will now have to win at least one game to keep the rest of the division aback. And with just one win, the division is theirs. The Bills, they beat the Patriots this week, and all they have to do is win their next 2 games to clinch the division. The Colts, they continue to get closer in their playoff chase, but I guess the AFC South is likely out of their reach at this point. The Patriots, it was a bad loss for them this week against the Bills, and as a result of that loss, they went all the way down to the 6th seed. They already lost to the Colts in the head-to-head game, and the Bills, they split the season series, but the Bills have the edge in the division because they only lost one game, and that was against the Patriots in the AFC East. The Dolphins, thanks to their 7-game winning streak, they have entered the fray in this division race. Not the division race, the playoff race. They're insane. They are the 7th seed if the playoffs start today. And they can not only take that 7-game winning streak, but the Clippers charging up Speaking of the Clippers, the Clippers, the Ravens, and the Raiders are on the outside looking in. However, the Ravens, they're getting one step closer towards not making the playoffs at all. Because the way the Ravens are right now, yikes. I don't know if they're gonna be there. On the NFC side of things, the Packers, their victory over the Browns. I mean, they already clinched the division, so all that matters at this point is getting that top seed. The Cowboys clinched the NFC East early before their Sunday night game, thanks to the Las Vegas Raiders beating the Denver Broncos, because they have this thing called the strength of victory, whatever the fuck that statistic means, but they could thank the Las Vegas Raiders for helping them clinch the NFC East early before their game against Washington. The Rams, they took the lead in the NFC West thanks to beating the Vikings and Arizona losing to the Colts a day earlier. The Bucs clinched the NFC South, but at this point, they're just looking for higher seeding because I don't know if they're going to try to get that top seed. And the Cardinals, sure, they got some help from the Vikings by losing as they clinched their playoff spot, but at this point, they're continuing to free fall and choking. And for those last two playoff spots, oh man, it's going to be a hog wild race. The 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Saints, and the Vikings are vying for those last two spots. But I think my 49ers are in the most trouble right now because Jimmy Garoppolo is looking in doubt with a thumb injury. It seems like he's wanting to play through it. Shanahan seems like he's like, nah, we want you healthy, my guy. We're going to try to put in Trey Lance, but the Niners nonetheless are looking like the most in trouble with Jimmy Garoppolo in doubt with that thumb injury. So that is your playoff picture check-in as we head into week 17. Who's going to make this postseason with the last week? It's do or die time. I don't know. Let me know how you feel. But speaking of week 17, here we are. It's the final week of the regular season. It's win or go home for many teams. And for some teams, well, they're just like, fuck it. It's our last game. It's our last game of the season. And it's just like, let's just get this over with. So either way, it's win or go home for many teams in the NFL. Who's getting into the playoffs and who's getting into who's getting that short end of the stick. Who's going to be that one team that gets so desperate they just want to see the other team fail and fail and fail. There's going to be a lot of thrillers, and there's going to be even blowouts that cost teams their playoff lives. We're going to see all of that. We're going to see all of these playoff all these playoff implications on the line in the final week of the... Hold on. I'm getting the call from somebody from I don't know. This is some random number, but I'll answer this. Hello? Wait. You're telling me that this isn't the last week of the regular season? There's something called a week 18. Wait, how come you didn't tell me this? Are you for real? Week 18. I know I've been saying this has been the biggest regular season ever. I know they've been marketing this. How come nobody told me this? This is not the last week of the regular season. What? Okay, all right. Thank you. Bye. Okay then. Well, then welcome to the last week of the regular season, part 1. Well, with 2 weeks left in the regular season, the playoff picture is getting much clearer and thinner. 4 teams have clinched their divisions, and nearly half of the playoff field is all filled up. Congratulations to the Green Bay Packers, the Dallas Cowboys, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the LA Rams, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Kansas City Chiefs. But only half of your work is done because all those teams are fighting for seeding at this point. Last week consisted of blowout city for pretty much half of the games and upset valley. This week it's probably going to be no different, as as much of the things I said just earlier is going to happen. Desperation, blowouts, upsets, close games. playoff lives on the line this week. And, there are a lot of playoff teams still alive. There's teams with playoff hopes trying to get in, whether it's like realistic or very stupid. There's always going to be that one game that has at least one team that's well out of the playoff picture trying to play spoiler. So there's going to be that one team that tries to avoid that one spoiler team, that one trap game in these last two games. So welcome to week 17, the last week of the regular season. Part uno. Yes, it is. So anyway, we got some playoff clinching scenarios as always. In this last week of the regular season, part uno. So things get a little more intense in this one. In the AFC side of things, for the Indianapolis Colts, it is simple. You win your game and you're in. You're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, and all you have to do is beat them and you're in. But it gets a little tricky because you may not have Carson Wentz in this one. And I'll explain when we do the picks. But for now, as we're talking playoff clinching scenarios, the Colts, they can still be in play for the AFC South. But if the Tennessee Titans beat the Dolphins this week, well, all hope of that dies. So the Colts are going to be huge Dolphins and Texans fans for the next 2 weeks. So speaking of the Titans, all they have to do this week is beat the Dolphins, and the AFC South is all but theirs. The Bills, they can't clinch the AFC East quite yet, but all they have to do, take care of business against the Falcons, and take care of business against the Jets, and the AFC East is yours. But for now, this week, they can clinch at least their playoff spot if they beat the Falcons, and the beat up Ravens lose to the Rams, and their playoff spot is theirs. The Pats can get their own playoff spot with the win against the Jaguars, and the Dolphins lose to the Titans. So these playoff spots are coming at a rapid pace this week. The Bengals, like I mentioned earlier, they can wrap up the AFC North if they manage an upset over the Kansas City Chiefs. It's going to be tough, but it's there. The Chiefs, they can get the top seed in the AFC if they beat the Bengals, and the Titans, they fall in an upset to the Dolphins. I mean, any given Sunday, but you never know. On the NFC side of things, the Green Bay Packers, they can clinch their own top seed in the NFC if they beat the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football, and the Dallas Cowboys get upset by the Arizona Cardinals early in the day. The Arizona Cardinals, they've fallen right into Rams' hands because, if LA beats the Ravens, and then later on the Cards fall into the Cowboys trap, the NFC West is all LA's. The Philadelphia Eagles, this week, all the trials and tribulations that they went through early in the season, and all the hard work that they went through this half of the season, it can be rewarded if they beat Washington, and then they see the Minnesota Vikings lose on Sunday night, and then they also see either the Saints and the Falcons lose, or they also see the 49ers beat the Houston Texans. So a combination of either one of those things. It gets a little dicey for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think either one of those things could possibly happen. Now for my 49ers. Yes. The 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo or with Trey Lance can sadly make their backdoor entrance into the playoffs and towards their way to an MVP. Yes, Nickelodeon's Most Valuable Player Award. And they can make that official if they beat the Houston Texans and the Saints somehow lose to the Carolina Panthers. Yes. Yeah, that backdoor entrance could all be official this week. So anyway, elimination. Who doesn't love to see a team have their playoff hopes die at the hands of another team? Just ask the Seahawks. Just ask the Seattle Seahawks last week. So by now, the Seahawks have already joined the Jaguars, the Lions, the Texans, the Giants, the Jets, and the Bears, and the Panthers on the deathbed of playoff hopes. So who gets to join them this week? Well, if Washington and Atlanta lose their games, it's lose and you're gone for them. Meanwhile, the Vikings are donezo if they lose also, and the Eagles beat Washington and the Saints also lose. And it's going to be interesting for them. If the Saints also lose their game somehow to the Panthers, and the Niners and the Eagles win, well, the Saints are also done so. So those are your playoff clinching scenarios for the week. And it's going to be a lot of these things, in my opinion, could possibly happen. But then again, any given Sunday. So that being said, let's get into my picks for this coming week, week 17, the last week of the regular season, part one. So we get into the Sunday slate of games. No Thursday night football. Oh man, that sucks. That's a bummer. So let's get into the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning action. The Philadelphia Eagles at 8-7 take on the Washington football team 6-9. Coming off the heels of an embarrassing Sunday night game where the Washington football team was trounced by 42 points. Man, it won't get any better, to be honest with you. Taylor Heineke has completely regressed, and there's ever since Chase Young was injured. I mean, sure, the Washington defense has looked good at times, but that was against terrible teams. You were playing Dallas, a really good team. And Philadelphia has gotten much better in the weeks gone by. And yes, the surging Philadelphia squad will eliminate the football team from contention for good. The LA Rams take on the Baltimore Ravens, and Lamar Jackson is trending towards playing as of right now. Don't quote me on that, but I don't. Even if he does play, whether or not he does play, whether it's Tyler Huntley or Josh Johnson or Lamar Jackson, I think Jackson alone won't be able to overcome the many injuries on defense that the Rams offense is going to completely exploit. Like, my God, this Rams team is probably going to head towards another massacre on the Ravens. The Tampa Bay Bucks take on the New York Jets, and what else do I really need to say? It's Tom Brady against the Jets. It's just a different uniform. I mean, what more do I need to say? It's Tampa Bay's game. The Miami Dolphins take on the Tennessee Titans in an important game for both teams. It's a tough test awaiting for both of these teams. Both of their defenses are pretty strong. It's a tough one to call, but I'm actually kind of leaning towards an upset. If the offensive line can hold up for the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa can air it out to his guys like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. If they can get the ground game going with what's his name? I don't know. the running back, Myles Gaskin. There we go. The Dolphins can actually win this one and make their case for one last playoff push. And I know, as unrealistic as that sounds, never say never in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars take on the New England Patriots. Do I need to say anything else about this one? I mean, the Pats, sure, they've been running into a wall since coming off their Week 14 bye. But this is a get-right game, I guess, since against an all-elite Jaguars team that just lost James Robinson to an Achilles injury. Yeah, nothing more to say about New England winning against Jacksonville. The Las Vegas Raiders take on the Indianapolis Colts. This is an important game for both teams because it's pretty much it's playoff or bust for the Raiders, and the Colts are just trying to solidify their spot into the postseason. So the Raiders, they had a decent win against the Denver Broncos. Granted, the Denver Broncos suck ass, and the Raiders' run defense was actually made to look like gods against Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. But yeah, don't expect the same thing against Johnny Taylor, whether or not Carson Wentz is going to be out of this game. So yeah, I think that's the only issue for the Colts is Carson Wentz. Will he play this game? I mean, yeah, the protocols have been adjusted so that Wentz could possibly come back in time for this game, but yeah, we don't know what's going to happen for with Wentz in this one. So whether or not Wentz plays, I think the Colts will still win this one. The Kansas City Chiefs take on the Cincinnati Bengals, and perhaps will probably be the game of the day. And this is going to be a litmus test for the Bengals to see if they can prove their worth against the best of the best. And, that comes in the form of a red-hot Chiefs team that's been playing well on both sides of the ball. And sure, the Chiefs offense has been relying on more than just Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. They've been spreading the ball around. And, this Chiefs team, they could probably get Travis Kelce back. And even if they don't get him back, they can practically almost run away with this game against the Bengals. I think experience will outweigh recency against the Bengals, and these Chiefs will outlast them in a dogfight. It's going to be a shootout in this one. So the Chiefs will beat the Bengals and prevent them from clinching the AFC North for at least 1 week. So the New York Giants take on the Chicago Bears. Yes, Blue G-Men will take on Bears football. Yes, the Week 17 matchup that we've all been waiting for. So, I guess the only advantage the Bears have to winning this meaningless game, and I know the Schleg Daddy doesn't want them to win a meaningless game, and I don't want them to either, because the Bears, they should be on track to firing Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace and their stupid presidents. But, I don't know, can you be as bad as the New York Giants? I don't think you couldn't be as bad as the Seahawks were last week. You have Justin Fields, and even if you don't have him, you have sick fails. And the Giants, what do they have? All they have is Saquon. That's it. So I don't know. Give me the Bears. The Atlanta Falcons travel to take on the Buffalo Bills, and this is going to be an important game for both teams. Yes, it's a pseudo-important game. The Bills are going to try to continue building on that momentum and control the AFC East. And the Falcons, this is their week where they have to win this game. They have to try to pull off an upset or they're out of playoff contention. So the Bills, in my mind, are going to continue to build on that momentum and probably crush the Falcons unless they choke it up, and they'll probably put the Falcons out for good in their playoff hopes. In the afternoon slate of games, the Houston Texans, yes, these Houston Texans, that coming off a upset over the LA Clippers, travel to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. This game, if you asked a couple weeks ago, people have been saying, oh, we can win this game guaranteed. This is a preseason game for the 49ers. But as it stands now, this game is as unpredictable as it gets. The Texans coming off one of the biggest upsets of the year, blowing out the Clippers, and the Niners not just coming off a dud in Tennessee, but they may not have Jimmy Garoppolo with a thumb sprain. And sure, Jimmy G said he'll play through it. His thumb injury is not going to require surgery, but I'm not sure if that's a smart move. Just ask Russell Wilson, ask Taysom Hill how that's going. And I'm not sure Kyle Shanahan wants to go through with that, especially with 2 games left in the regular season. And whether or not he plays, I think he'll have negative results. So enter Trey Lance time, baby. So I know this game is one the Niners can't sleep on anymore, but even with the playoffs at stake, the focus should have always been on the development of Trey. So it should honestly be an interesting one, but I think somehow, some way, no matter what way you put it, the Texans will Texans. They'll find a way to fuck this up. And this game, I think it'll show the flashes of Trey Lance's potential. If he plays this game, that's if he starts this game, and the Niners will grind out this win somehow, some way. So the Denver Broncos travel to LA to take on the Clippers, clippering it up. The Chargers, they should be getting mostly everyone, most of their starters back from the COVID list, and they host the terrible and offensively challenged Denver Broncos. And who's going to be starting? Drew Lock again. Yeah, Drew Lock is the shit. And I don't mean that in a good way. And, Denver should be taken care of by the Chargers as they bounce back from a 2-game losing streak. The Carolina Panthers take on the New Orleans Saints in a game that I don't understand why it's in this late game window, but for whatever reason it is. The Panthers are turning back to Sam Darnold. Yes, no more Cam time, no more Super Cam in not New Orleans, in Carolina. But this is at a time where their defense is landing on the COVID list while the Saints are getting everybody back from that same list in a time where they desperately need them. Like, the Saints are getting closer to getting eliminated from playoff contention, as I mentioned earlier. And, this Panthers defense is probably going to get run over by the Saints, no matter what you slice it or dice it. The Saints are going to win this game. So, then we have the Detroit Lions taking on the Seattle Seahawks in possibly Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson's last games as on the Seahawks, possibly, as they'll probably put on one last show against a terrible Lions team. The Arizona Cardinals take on the Dallas Cowboys in another big game of the week. The Cardinals, their cold streak is probably going to continue against the Big D. It's the Big D in Dallas, as they'll probably ride over this Cardinals team. They'll probably ride this big wave of momentum all over a struggling Arizona team. So give me the Cowboys in this one. Then in the Sunday night game, the Minnesota Vikings take on the Green Bay Packers, which probably has, again, blowout written all over it, because no matter how desperate, no matter how aggressive the Vikings want to be, and aggressive is probably conservative, equals conservative in Kirk Cousins' mind. The Vikings will try to make him do that for once in his life. However, I don't think it'll be enough to tower the might of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and pretty much the entire Packers offense. As the Packers will put the last nail in Minnesota's coffin and their playoff hopes. So the Packers are going to eliminate the Minnesota Vikings for playoff contention for good. Then in the Monday Night Football game, the Cleveland Browns take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, the last Monday Night Football game of the season. And it's going to be an AFC North rivalry. Yes, this is one that consists of the leader of men, the washed-ass leader of men, Big Ben. It could be his last home game as a Pittsburgh Steeler and possibly his last home game ever, before he rides off into the sunset after Week 18. But first things first, as for as much as Big Ben and the Steelers want to put on one last show, possibly before Big Ben could possibly retire after the season. I think the skid marks will find a way to win this one. And first many interceptions that Baker Mayfield has thrown this season, and especially last week, he'll find a way to win this one. He'll find a way to win this one somehow, some way, in very ugly football. So those are my picks for Week 17, the final week of the regular season, Part Uno. The prelude, the preview, I guess you could call it the pre-show to Week 18, the final week of the regular season. So, yeah, those are my picks for Week 17. You can go against them. You can support them. But let me know who you're going with in Week 17, however you can. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you for tuning into this fine episode. Recapping week 16. I keep saying week 15. That's not how I want 2022 to come so badly. But anyway, thank you for tuning into this fine episode, recapping week 16 of the NFL season and previewing week 17. We're getting closer to the playoffs, boys. We're almost there. And then postseason, and then sadly, the end of the season. Oh man, it's coming all so quick. But anyway, that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to listen to the show however you can and wherever you can, whether it's on YouTube or any of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, and follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Very cold, very casual, and yet spicy, like a very cold and Garfield-esque lasagna. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Saying so long to 2021. I'll see you on the other side in 2022. But until next time, peace out.